stranger stopped to help a woman change her tire, not knowing she was on her way to say goodbye. The night was cold and restless. A thin veil of fog clung to the asphalt, curling and shifting with every passing vehicle like whispered secrets lost in the dark. Out here, on this lonely stretch of highway, the world felt hollow, an endless ribbon of road stretching beyond sight, swallowed by shadows. Emily's car sat stranded by the roadside, hazard lights blinking steadily like a faint heartbeat, her only signal in the vast stillness. She stood beside it, arms crossed tightly against the chill, her chestnut hair loose and tangled, brushing against her face with every gust. Her breath formed pale clouds that quickly dissolved into the night air. Her hands trembled, not just from the cold. Car after car roared past, their headlights cutting through the mist in sharp, fleeting beams before disappearing into the darkness. None slowed, none even glanced her way. Each passing vehicle was a reminder of isolation, of the world moving on without her. Emily shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her gaze falling to the flat tire, the rubber shredded and useless against the gravel shoulder. She didn't reach for the trunk. She didn't move toward the driver's seat. She simply waited. Her eyes were distant, unfocused, fixed on something far away, something beyond this moment, beyond the broken wheel. And before we go any further, where are you listening from tonight? Maybe you're somewhere quiet, wrapped in your own stillness. Or perhaps you're on a busy street or a crowded bus, surrounded by the noise of the world. Wherever you are, take a breath with me and let the story reach you. Minutes stretched on like hours. The highway swallowed strangers like waves in endless sea. Cars speeding past, faces unknown and untouched. Then, in the distance, headlights appeared again. But this time, they slowed, hesitated, before pulling onto the shoulder with a crunch of gravel. From the driver's side, a man stepped out, hands tucked into the pockets of a worn jacket. The yellow glow from his truck's headlights cast long shadows across the road, stretching toward her like quiet promises. He didn't know it yet, but this moment, this simple choice to stop, would quietly and permanently change both of their lives. Daniel had been driving for nearly an hour, forced off his usual route by roadwork that blocked the main highway. The detour led him down this quieter back road, a narrow two-lane ribbon bordered by endless fields that melted into the night shadows. The radio played softly, a low hum behind the steady rumble of the truck's engine. He wore a worn jacket zipped halfway up, his dark brown hair tousled slightly by the breeze through the open window. One hand rested on the wheel, while the other drummed an absent rhythm on the gear shift. His thoughts wandered home. Leftover dinner waiting in the fridge, a couch that promised rest, and a few hours of sleep before tomorrow's grind. This detour was an annoyance, but nothing out of the ordinary. Then, through the windshield, something caught his eye, a flicker of red blinking steadily in the fog. Far off to the side, hazard lights. As he drew closer, the silhouette of a car became visible, parked awkwardly on a gravel shoulder. And beside it, a figure standing still, arms folded tight against the cold. Even from inside the truck, Daniel could see her, young, maybe early 30s, chestnut hair loose around her shoulders, catching the faint glow of his headlights. Her posture was stiff, tense, as if weighed down by something invisible. For a brief moment, Daniel hesitated. The stories flashed in his mind. People luring drivers into danger, or worse. The safer choice would be to keep driving. But something else stirred, an impulse stronger than fear. The human instinct to help, to reach out when another is clearly in need. Without fully realizing it, his foot eased off the gas pedal. The truck slowed. Gravel crunched beneath the tires as he pulled in behind her car, turning off the radio to let the silence settle between them. He stepped out into the cold air, the scent of damp earth mixing with exhaust fumes. His breath formed soft clouds as he closed the door and adjusted his jacket. "Need a hand?" he called, voice steady but gentle enough to cut through the quiet. Emily hesitated, then nodded, a small motion, almost shy. Neither of them knew it yet, but in these few minutes, a connection was forming. One born from chance, from kindness, and from moments neither could have predicted. Daniel moved closer to the car, the gravel crunching softly under his boots with each step. The truck's headlights spilled across the worn paint of the vehicle, and caught the fine mist lingering in the air. "Flat tire?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of genuine concern. Emily nodded, her arms still folded tightly across her chest. "Yeah, I didn't even see what I hit," she replied softly, her voice low and tired. Daniel crouched beside the damaged tire, running a hand over the shredded rubber. "This is pretty bad," he said. "You got a spare in the trunk?" Emily took a step back, but didn't move to open the trunk yet. Her gaze drifted down the empty highway, as if searching for something or someone. Her green eyes were glassy, reflecting the truck's dim light but distant, unfocused, carrying the weight of an unspoken burden. Daniel glanced up at her, noticing the tension around her jaw, the way her hands trembled just slightly. There was something more than cold or fatigue beneath her surface, a hidden story she wasn't ready to share. He decided not to press. Instead, he offered a small, steady smile. "All right, let's get this fixed and get you back on the road." Emily moved to the back of the car, opening the trunk to reveal the spare tire and jack tucked inside. She stepped aside quietly, watching as Daniel lifted the heavy tire onto the hub. As he worked, Daniel tried to lighten the mood. "Not the best night to be stuck out here, huh?" Emily gave a faint laugh, quiet and uneven, like a candle flickering in a draft. "No, definitely not." For several minutes, the only sound were the clicks and clinks of the wrench, punctuated by the occasional rush of cars speeding past on the highway. Daniel noticed Emily kept glancing down the road, her eyes searching the darkness. He wanted to ask what she was waiting for, but the words caught in his throat. Whatever it wasn't something she was ready to share. In that quiet, suspended moment, the unspoken filled the space between them. Neither knew what the future held, but for now, they were two strangers bound by the fragile thread of a shared, fleeting encounter. Daniel worked steadily, his hands moving with practiced ease as he loosened the lug nuts from the damaged tire. The cold night air wrapped around them, cool and persistent, weaving between the faint sounds of distant traffic and the subtle rustle of leaves in the breeze. "So, where are you headed tonight?" Daniel asked gently, his voice breaking the silence but careful not to intrude. Emily hesitated, her fingers twisting nervously at the hem of her sweater. She looked down, then up again, her green eyes catching the yellow glow of the truck's headlights. "Somewhere important," she said after a long pause, her voice soft, almost distant. Daniel nodded slowly, understanding without pushing. "Important how?" She swallowed hard, the weight behind her words pressing against the night. "It's just something I need to do." He said nothing, but the silence between them carried its own meaning, a quiet space where unspoken truths lingered. The spare tire was heavy, but Daniel lifted it with strength and steadiness, positioning it on the hub. The rhythmic sound of the wrench turning filled the quiet, a simple, familiar noise grounding the moment. Emily stayed close, the glow of the truck's lights casting soft shadows across her face. Her breath came in shallow, uneven pulls, betraying the calm she tried to maintain. "Do you want to wait with you?" Daniel offered gently, sensing the fragile thread holding her together. Emily looked up, surprise flickering across her face, and then she nodded quietly. They stood side by side, the cold night wrapping around them like a shroud, but in that shared silence there was a strange comfort, a reminder that even in loneliness, someone could be there. Daniel thought about the words he wanted to say, something to reach beyond the tire and the cold. Finally, he spoke softly. "Whatever's waiting for you, maybe it can wait for a smile." Emily's lips curved into a small, shaky smile, the first sign of warmth she had allowed herself since the night began. For a fleeting moment, the heaviness lifted just enough to let a little hope seep through. Daniel finished tightening the last lug nut, stepping back to wipe his hands on a worn cloth. The spare tire sat firmly in place, ready to carry Emily safely down the road once more. She looked at him then, her eyes reflecting the faint amber glow of the truck's headlights. For a long moment, there was silence between them, a fragile pause where unspoken feelings hovered just beneath the surface. "Thank you," Emily finally whispered, her voice softer than before, almost as if the words surprised even herself. Daniel smiled gently, the kind of smile that carries no judgment, only quiet reassurance. "No problem. I'm just Glad I happened to be driving by." She shifted on her feet, glancing down the road ahead, as if measuring the distance she still had to travel. Her chestnut hair fell softly across her face, framing eyes that held a mixture of gratitude and something deeper. Something like relief, but tinged with lingering sadness. "Are you going to be okay?" Daniel asked, his tone careful, not one to pry but unable to hide his concern. Emily hesitated, biting her lower lip as if gathering strength. "I don't know yet," she admitted quietly, "but I'm trying." Daniel nodded, understanding more than he said. There are battles you don't always see, struggles that aren't easy to explain. "Drive safe," he said, stepping back to give her space. "And remember, sometimes whatever's waiting out there can wait for a smile. It's okay to hold on to that." Emily's lips curved into that same faint, fragile smile, the small flicker of light that had first sparked when he spoke those words. She climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, and for a moment hesitated before pulling back onto the highway. Daniel watched her taillights fade into the mist, unaware that his simple kindness that night had done more than change a tire. It had quietly saved a life. The night stretched on, dark and endless, but somewhere along that road, a seed of hope had been planted, one that would grow slowly in its own time. Daniel's truck rolled slowly down the dark highway, the hum of the engine blending with the quiet night around him. The memory of the evening still lingered, Emily's tired eyes, the fragile smile she gave, the weight behind her silence. Though the encounter had been brief, it had left an impression that refused to fade. He found his thoughts drifting back to that stretch of lonely road, to the soft fog curling above the asphalt, and to the woman who stood there, wrapped in more than just a jacket against the cold. Arriving home, Daniel went through the motions, heated up leftovers, flipped through television channels, sat in the stillness of his small living room. But the quiet felt heavier than usual, filled with the echo of unanswered questions. Who was she? What had brought her to that moment? What battle was she fighting that he couldn't see? He told himself it was just a simple act of kindness, nothing more than helping a stranger change a tire. But deep down, he knew it had meant so much more. That night, as he lay awake in the dark, Daniel realized that sometimes the smallest moments hold the greatest power. A smile, a kind word, a few minutes of time, they might seem insignificant, but for someone else, they could be everything. And though he doubted he would ever see Emily again, the connection they'd shared had left a mark. In a world that often moves too fast, Daniel's quiet act of kindness was a reminder to himself and to anyone listening that sometimes simply stopping can change a life. 2 weeks passed. Life moved on in its relentless, unyielding way. Daniel buried himself in work, the steady routine of his days acting like a shield against quiet thoughts that occasionally drifted back to that foggy night. Most days, the memory of the woman by the roadside, her distant eyes, that faint smile, felt like a soft echo, barely audible beneath the noise of everyday life. He told himself it was a fleeting moment, one that had changed nothing and everything all at once. But then, one afternoon, everything shifted. As Daniel was closing up his truck for the day, a small envelope was slipped through the business door. It was simple, unadorned, without a return address, bearing only the name of his business scrawled in neat handwriting across the front. Curiosity stirred, and he held the envelope, fingers brushing the paper as if it might whisper its secrets to him. The mundane afternoon suddenly felt charged with quiet anticipation. His mind raced. Could it really be from her? After all this time? He tore it open carefully, unfolding a sheet of white paper filled with writing. Uneven lines, smudged ink, hurried and shaky handwriting that spoke of urgency and raw emotion. The letter pulled him in deeper than he expected, the woman's words painting a vivid picture of her world in turmoil. The darkness she faced, the overwhelming weight of despair, and the fragile hope sparked by a stranger's kindness. As Daniel read, the sterile light of the office softened. Around him, the hum of computers and distant voices faded, replaced by the raw intensity of life hanging in the balance. The letter was more than just a note. It was a confession, a plea, a thank you, and a promise all wrapped into one fragile package. With every sentence, Daniel felt the gravity of that night settle more firmly on his shoulders. The woman he'd helped wasn't just a stranger, with a flat tire. She was someone fighting battles he could scarcely imagine. And in that moment, Daniel realized something profound, that the smallest acts of kindness, the moments when we choose to stop and see another person, can ripple through time and change destinies. Daniel sat down slowly, the letter trembling slightly in his hands as he began to read the words that would change everything he thought he knew about that night. That night, I was driving to the bridge to end my life. The truth hit him with a sharp clarity, piercing the calm of his day like a sudden storm. He pictured the woman standing there, wrapped in her pain, so close to giving up entirely. You were the only one who stopped. You didn't ask questions. You didn't judge. You simply told me, whatever's waiting can wait for a smile. He remembered those words, spoken softly in the cold night air, offered without expectation, a quiet lifeline thrown across a sea of darkness. That smile stayed with me longer than I thought possible. It was enough to make me pause, to take a breath, to choose not to let the darkness win that night. Her handwriting faltered here, the lines uneven as tears threatened to spill. Since then, I've started reaching out for help. I'm taking it one day at a time. It's not easy, and some days are harder than others, but I'm still here. I'm still trying. Daniel's chest tightened as he absorbed the weight of her courage. The battle she'd fought in silence, the hope that had begun to bloom because of a simple moment of kindness he had never thought would matter. You saved me without even knowing it. If you hadn't stopped, if you hadn't said those words, I don't know if I would be writing this today. As Daniel folded the letter, a deep sense of awe and responsibility washed over him. This was a reminder that no act of kindness is ever wasted. No small gesture is ever truly insignificant. Sometimes all it takes is to stop, to see a stranger, to offer a smile, and in doing so, to give someone the strength to choose life. Daniel sat back in his chair, the letter folded gently in his hands as he stared off into a quiet room. Outside, the evening light faded slowly, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror the weight settling deep within him. For hours, his thoughts circled back to that night. The cold fog curling over the asphalt, the lonely highway stretching endlessly in front of them. He remembered how still she'd been, standing there beside her car with her arms crossed tightly, eyes distant and glazed with sorrow. He had seen the surface, but only now did he realize the ocean of pain hiding beneath. He thought about the idea of fate or coincidence, and how fragile the line between life and death had been in that moment. How by a twist of chance, he had been the one to stop, to offer a smile, a few kind words, and how that simple gesture had become a lifeline, a reason to pause when all hope seemed lost. The letter's words echoed in his mind. You saved me without even knowing it. Daniel felt the gravity of that sentence in his chest. He had acted without expectation, without knowledge of the battles raging behind her eyes, and yet his kindness had carried the power to save a life. He replayed every detail of their brief encounter, searching for clues he might have missed. The tremble of her hands, the faint flicker of a smile when he spoke, the way her breath hitched in the cold. Those tiny signs, invisible to most, were fragments of story he hadn't known how to see. The more he reflected, the more he understood that kindness is often invisible, a quiet force that works in shadows. It's not always about heroic acts or grand gestures, but about those small moments where we choose to be present, to see another person's pain and offer a touch of humanity. Daniel's thoughts turned outward, to the countless others who might be silently struggling, standing on their own bridges of despair, waiting for someone to notice, to stop, to care. How many more lives could be changed if only we chose to look? He felt a deep humility, knowing how close he had been to passing by, and how close Emily had been to giving up. The fragile thread of hope he'd helped untangle that night was a powerful reminder of the profound impact a single person can have. The letter also filled him with a quiet awe of human resilience, the courage it takes to face each day when the weight of darkness presses so heavily. Emily's journey was far from over, but the fact that she was still fighting filled Daniel with hope. As he sat in the fading light, he made a silent vow to carry this understanding forward, to never overlook the small opportunities to offer kindness, to never underestimate the power of a smile or a moment's attention. Because sometimes those small moments are all that stand between despair and hope, between giving up and holding on. And sometimes Just stopping to be present for another person can change the course of their life forever. Daniel sat quietly, the letter still folded neatly in his hands, his mind swirling with questions and emotions that refused to settle. The hum of the outside world seemed distant now, replaced by a storm reflection inside him. He thought back to that cold, foggy night, to the stretch of lonely highway where Emily had stood frozen in pain. It was a night heavy with silence, the kind of silence that presses down on your chest and makes everything feel unbearably still. What if he hadn't stopped? What if he'd been too busy, too distracted, too afraid to pull over? The weight of that possibility settled on him like a stone. Could a moment so fleeting, a choice so small, really have made such a difference? The answer, painfully clear, was yes. Daniel imagined Emily's mind as she sat there on the side of the road. Each passing car rejection, each one driving past without a second thought. How many times had she wished for someone, anyone, to see her, to simply stop and care? He thought about the bridge she mentioned in her letter, a place where countless souls had ended their stories. How close she had been to joining them, how delicate the thread had been between choosing life and choosing the end. And yet, in the midst of that darkness, a stranger's kindness became her lifeline. His words, his smile, that moment of presence. They became a crack in the wall of despair, enough to let a little light in. Daniel felt a rush of gratitude, not for himself, but for the power of human connection, for the way a single act can ripple outward, unseen and often unacknowledged, changing destinies in ways no one could predict. He wondered about the countless others out there, standing on their own invisible ledges, waiting for that one sign of hope. How many might still be waiting for someone to stop? This reflection filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that life often hinges on moments like these, moments when we choose to slow down, to reach out, to care without expectation. He thought about his own life, the ways he might have missed opportunities to make a difference simply because he was moving too fast or caught up in his own world. From this day forward, Daniel promised himself he would be different. He would be more present, more aware. He would offer kindness not just as a reaction, but as a deliberate choice, because sometimes it's the smallest choices that carry the greatest weight. And perhaps most importantly, he carried with him the hope that Emily's story would inspire others to look a little closer, to listen a little deeper, and to never underestimate the power of a single smile. Because sometimes what's waiting can wait for a smile. And sometimes that smile is all it takes to save a life. In the days and weeks following that cold night on the roadside, something inside Daniel began to shift. What had once seemed like a simple, almost routine act of helping a stranger now carried a weight and significance he hadn't anticipated. He found himself noticing the world differently. Its quiet moments, its silent cries for help hidden beneath everyday masks. The barista behind the counter who forced a smile despite tired eyes. The hurried pedestrian clutching a phone as if searching for an anchor. The co-worker whose laughter seemed a bit too loud, a shield against something darker. Each became a reminder that beneath the surface, many were quietly struggling, waiting for someone to stop, to see, to care. Daniel's act of kindness that night had opened his eyes to this invisible world, a realm where small gestures might mean the difference between hope and despair. At work, his usual routine began to evolve. He lingered longer in conversations, listened more deeply, and offered help without waiting to be asked. His smiles were more genuine, his presence more attentive. The seed planted on that foggy highway grew into a daily practice of compassion and awareness. Sometimes, late at night, he found himself wondering about Emily, where she was, how far she'd come on her journey, whether that fragile smile had grown into something stronger, something that could withstand the storms ahead. He realized that kindness wasn't a one-time event, but a ripple spreading outward, touching lives beyond the initial moment. That small choice to stop and help had set in motion waves he could never fully trace, ripples extending far beyond the roadside where their paths had crossed. Daniel's world, once framed by routine and practicality, now carried a deeper purpose, a quiet mission to be present for those who might need it most, even when no one else noticed. He understood now that life isn't measured only by grand achievements, but by these simple acts, these moments when we choose to be human, to connect, to care. And though he never expected to see Emily again, Her story stayed with him, a powerful reminder of the fragile beauty of life and the invisible battles waged every day. In the end, Daniel's choice to stop was more than just kindness. It was a testament to profound power each of us holds. The power to heal, to save, to change a life with nothing more than a smile and the willingness to be there. As the story of that cold, foggy night settles into your heart, take a moment to breathe it in, to feel the weight and the hope that linger in the quiet spaces between the words. Daniel's simple act of kindness was more than just a gesture. It was a lifeline, a beacon of light in the darkest of moments. But this story is not just about one man or one woman. It's about all of us, the power we hold in our hands every day to be the difference in someone's life. Think about the times you've rushed past someone without seeing them fully, the moments when you could have stopped but didn't, the stories you don't know, the pain others carry silently, hidden behind smiles or downcast eyes. This story invites us to slow down, to look deeper, and to remember that sometimes the smallest kindnesses are the ones that echo forever. It asks us to hold space for each other, to offer a smile, a word, a presence, even when it feels like it won't matter, because it does. Emily's story reminds us that no one is truly alone when we choose to stop, when we choose to care. Her courage to reach out, even in silence, and Daniel's willingness to listen without judgment created a ripple that saved a life. What if we all chose to be that ripple? To be the person who stops instead of drives past? Who offers hope instead of indifference? In a world that often feels fast and disconnected, this story is a call to remember our shared humanity and the profound impact of presence and kindness. So, wherever you are right now, whether you're sitting alone or surrounded by others, take a moment to think about who might need you to stop, to listen, to smile. Because that small choice might be the light that pulls someone back from the edge. And if you ever find yourself in a place of darkness, remember that help can come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes from a stranger, a smile, or a few kind words that remind you that you are seen, you are valued, and you are not alone. Let Emily's story be a quiet reminder that every life matters, every moment counts, and every kindness carries the power to save. Thank you for watching. Let this story stay with you, and may it inspire you to be the light in someone's dark night.